Now, your host, Michael Cohen, with the Capital City Recap on more compelling talk radio, 1320 WILS.
How things have changed. 6:33, it is sunny. It's 46 and just beautiful out there. Thanks for joining us. I'm Michael Cohen. This is 1320 WILS. First, the University of Oklahoma and really the country still shocked over these videos that came out. They were circulated on social media of members of a fraternity singing racial songs. To talk about this, we're joined by Royalyn Reid, diversity and sensitivity expert. She's at thecmiteam.com, thecmiteam.com. Royalyn, great to have you here.
Hey, Mike, glad to be with you.
Yeah, this is, I guess these kinds of stories come out once in a while, but this is quite a doozy. Let's listen first to what they were doing. They were, first of all, they're on a bus. Everyone's wearing tuxedos. They're going to some kind of social event. And here's a report of what they were chanting.
The audio on this clip is disturbing. A group of young men and women on a bus who don't seem to know they're being recorded, chanting this.
We'll never be in we'll never be in
The clip purportedly shows students from the University of Oklahoma using a racial slur, the N-word, singing about their fraternity, Sigma Alpha Epsilon.
Yeah, so the bleeps were obviously the N-word there. Then they're talking about hanging from a tree also. Now, what was your initial reaction hearing all this?
You know, Mike, the thing is, it really was just disappointing. Because whether it was in fun or whether they really meant it or didn't know, the sad thing is it was just not appropriate of thinking of where we should be and where they should be, even on the day it was. So
and
lack of knowledge.
When Black Americans hear this, see this kind of video, do you think they have that kind of indecisiveness where they're like, it could be this, it could just be a bunch of kids saying dumb things, or how does it strike most African Americans?
Well, I think if we look at it, Mike, if it's against anyone, if it's a blonde and you're telling dumb blonde jokes, they probably won't like it as much or think it's as funny as if you were not blonde, or if it's a male joke or whatever group. Mm-hmm. So the thing we have to see is when you make comments about groups, especially that you're not in or doesn't affect you, it's hurting and it is offensive to that other group. But it's, like I said, we tend as humans don't see it if we're not in that group.
And what do you make of these situations now where you have people saying distasteful things in what they believe is in private, and then it suddenly goes public this way?
Well, I think that's something we all have to look at. The way I look at it is, we've come a long ways, but obviously we have a long ways to go. We would just look at just different things that have happened this year, and it's hurtful, and it's always right down racial lines. So we've come a long ways, but when we see things like this, so how do we look at it holistically? We're kind of talking about it, how we view different groups and respond. Mm-hmm. But then getting to what you're saying is, how do we look at it as individuals? Because it's one thing to maybe quote-unquote politically correct or socially correct, but how do we talk at home around the kitchen table, around the water cooler talk, mm-hmm. whether it could be unconscious or it could be consciously a certain way.
And do you think when you see college students talking like this, singing like this, do you think it's reflective of their family and where they're from, or is this young people misbehaving?
Well, it could be a combination of both, whether it's misbehaving or knowing, but it comes from a lack of knowledge or even ignorance. And, we also have to look at, Mike, we're talking about even Selma yesterday. 50 years wasn't that long ago. We're talking about parents and grandparents who lived through that time. So there's still feelings and healing that needs to go on. And so sometimes we hear things or things are assumed
right.
In our homes.
You say ignorance, but isn't it known, commonly known, that the N-word is something that people shouldn't be saying?
And in the N-word is one thing, but also, too, is that's whether or not politically correct, but even what was the meaning behind it? Even more so than the N-word, they're saying that a group of people will never be in our organization, not because they know them, not because they're not qualified, not because we don't want to associate with them, just because they're in a certain group. And then to go on further and saying lynching and hanging from a tree, whether they know how serious that is or anything not. That's what's most offensive to people.
And so when you're in college and you're singing these kinds of songs, what's the likelihood that you will mature out of this attitude and become more open-minded?
Well, you know what? I think we may see some changes now with social media, because unfortunately, I bet you a lot of these young men, if they could go back and change it, because that's one good thing that we're seeing is positive. We see the university from the president on down. We're seeing the fraternity, the national president on down. We're seeing OU students, with their prayer vigil and protest and other things. Everyone is unified in saying this is wrong. So it is a rude awakening for these young men, and if they can go back and look, they don't have their chapter today, at least they don't today, and we don't know what the future is going to be in terms of that.
Right.
So imagine with them, and if others don't want to go through something like this, society might be moving in a different direction.
Yeah, it certainly wasn't like a big drunken frat party. They were on a bus. There was a mixture of guys and girls there. They were going to, I think, some kind of a dance or some kind of a social event.
Right.
How poignant was it to see everyone dressed so nicely in tuxedos singing this kind of a song?
Well, that happens all the time. We walk around, the same thing about water cooler. We walk around, we can walk around at work and say, hey, how are you doing? But what do we say in a little huddle? Or what do we say at home? So that's where, we were talking about earlier. We also have to start with ourselves and look within how we view things from our own experiences or what was passed down to us from our parents, or just thoughtless things.
Right. Do you think if someone is raised with certain viewpoints but learns not to talk this way, is that a better, a better place to be than these young people, what they're up to?
That is a start, but even more important, and that's what diversity training is all about and what we do in our company, and you want to do all around, is beginning to see differences, see the value in the differences, but also note that words can hurt and they can offend and around there. So there's different exercises and different things that we can do to create awareness that doesn't have to be hard and heavy, but just really hit home.
Right.
And from there, a person can choose to make a difference that should catapult them further as well as their family in the long run.
Do you think they'd be singing this song if there were any black people on the bus?
That's a very good question.
The answer is likely what?
What do you think?
Well, yeah, I don't think so. I think they would be keeping the songs to themselves at the very least. Well, look, Royalyn Reid, diversity and sensitivity expert. Her website, thecmiteam.com. It's thecmiteam.com. Check her out. Royalyn, thank you.
Always good to be with you, Mike.